One of the two factories on Earth that builds Yamaha outboards has gone silent, and the reason is under the ground it stands on. On the 28th of July at 27 minutes past 4 in the afternoon, an earthquake of magnitude 7.1 struck Kumamoto Prefecture in southern Japan, producing the strongest shaking Japan's intensity scale can register. By early August, 38 people were confirmed dead. A shopping mall partially collapsed after an explosion, and at a paper mill in the city of Yatsushiro, a falling smokestack killed 5 workers. That deserves saying plainly before anything else, because what follows is about industry, and industry comes second to the people of Kumamoto. Buried in the wire reports sits one line almost nobody in boating has noticed. Yamaha Motor suspended operations at a marine engine plant in Yatsushiro, the same city where the smokestack fell, in the zone where Japan's mapping authority measured the Earth shifting by nearly a meter. And the problem isn't the machines. Machines can be replaced on a schedule. The problem is what the earthquake may have done to the ground the factory stands on. And ground has no replacement schedule. How long does damage like that take to heal? And what does it mean for anyone waiting on a Yamaha this fall? The geography of a Yamaha outboard is worth 30 seconds because almost nobody thinks about where these engines actually come from. Yamaha sells into the whole world and holds, by market research estimates, roughly 38% of the global outboard market. And that worldwide flow of engines runs principally through 2 factories. One in Fukuroi, in Shizuoka Prefecture on Japan's main island, and one in Yatsushiro, in Kumamoto. 2 addresses. Everything else, the dealers, the distributors, the boat builders rigging transoms in Tennessee and Queensland, sits downstream of those 2 doors. On July 28th, one of the 2 doors closed. Yamaha suspended operations at the Yatsushiro plant, and the company has said very little beyond that. No damage assessment has been published. No restart date has been announced. And that silence, to be fair, is normal this early. The whole region is still counting its losses, aftershocks are continuing, and experts have cautioned that further strong quakes could follow. A company inspecting a factory during ongoing aftershocks doesn't owe anyone a press release. But the wire reports carried one technical word about the Yatsushiro plant, and that word is the reason this video exists rather than a 30-second news mention: liquefaction. Here's what it means, and the picture is worth holding on to. Some ground is not as solid as it looks. Soil saturated with water behaves firmly right up until it's shaken hard enough. And then the grains lose their grip on each other and the ground behaves briefly like a liquid. You've stood on it. Wet sand at the tide line, solid under your feet until you stomp, and then suddenly slurry. Now scale that up, put a factory on top of it, and shake it at magnitude 7.1. Buildings on liquefied ground don't just rattle. They settle and they shift. And the land around Yatsushiro didn't merely shake. Japan's Geospatial Information Authority measured crustal deformation there of up to 84 centimeters. The ground under that part of Kumamoto ended the day nearly a meter from where it started. None of that tells us what condition Yamaha's plant is in, and honesty requires underlining that. Liquefaction was reported at the site. Its extent was not. The building may be fine. The foundations may be fine. Nobody outside Yamaha currently knows, and this channel won't pretend to. What can be said is why the word matters so much when it attaches to a factory. Modern engine production is a precision business. Machining lines built to fine tolerances. Assembly systems that assume a floor that doesn't move. Every other kind of industrial damage has a catalog answer. A broken machine has a replacement. A torn roof has a contractor. A severed supply route has a workaround. Ground is the one input a factory cannot order from a supplier. If the soil under a plant has to be recertified, reinforced, or rebuilt before precision equipment can trust it again, the timeline stops being a repair schedule and becomes a civil engineering project. And this region has run that experiment before, almost exactly a decade ago, with a factory in the same prefecture. The result of that experiment is the most important number in this story. In April 2016, Kumamoto Prefecture was hit by a pair of powerful earthquakes. The same region. Among the industrial casualties was a Honda factory, and what happened next is the only real-world benchmark this story has. That facility took about 5 months to return to its pre-earthquake production system. 5 months for one of the most operationally capable manufacturers on the planet. That's the floor on how fast inspecting, recertifying, and restarting precision manufacturing can go after violent ground movement, no matter who's doing it. Set that benchmark against the calendar and the math is uncomfortable. 5 months from late July lands the restart around the end of the year, which would mean a Yamaha plant dark through the months when boat builders plan next spring's boats. That is the worst case shape of this. It is not a prediction, because the honest picture has a second column and it's genuinely reassuring. Across the same region, most of the industrial shutdowns after July 28th look precautionary rather than catastrophic. TSMC, the semiconductor giant whose Kumamoto plant sits in the quake zone, evacuated its people, inspected and confirmed within a day that the structure was safe and its systems were functioning normally. Toyota's 3 regional plant suspensions were about logistics and supplier conditions, not building damage. Nissan's were parts delays. An economist at Nomura Research Institute put the total production losses below 1 trillion yen and called the impact relatively temporary. And analysts broadly attributed most of the stoppages to worker safety precautions. On that reading, Yamaha's suspension could be exactly what it sounds like. A careful company checking a factory during aftershocks, back online in weeks. So which column does Yatsushiro belong to? Here's the honest sorting. TSMC's plant sits in Kikuyo, where the shaking registered upper 5 on Japan's scale. Severe but 2 full steps below the maximum. Yatsushiro is a different story. It's where the smokestack came down, where the cargo train derailed, where the crustal deformation measured its 84 centimeters, and where the liquefaction was reported, including at Yamaha's own site. The reassuring cases and the Yamaha case are not in the same ground. That doesn't make the 5-month scenario the likely one. It means the fast recovery examples people will point to come from the lighter end of this earthquake, and the one outboard plant in the story sits at the heavier end. One more thing keeps the window open. The supply chain analysts covering this event flagged a pattern from every industrial earthquake. Even where plants are undamaged, supplier-driven shortfalls usually surface days later, because a restarted factory still can't build engines faster than its slowest supplier recovers. A marine engine plant drinks from a long chain of suppliers, and some of them are small regional businesses that don't issue press releases. Yamaha could reopen its own doors and still not build engines at rate. Nobody outside the company will see that problem until delivery dates start moving. Which is the state of play, a benchmark that says months, counterexamples that say weeks, a plant located in the harder hit ground, and a supplier fog that clears slowly. Now put that uncertainty where it actually lands, on a company that entered this summer in worse shape than most boaters realize. The timing is the cruelty of this story because the earthquake found Yamaha's marine business in the middle of its hardest stretch in years. The picture from Yamaha's own published accounts and announcements, marine operating profit down 39% in a year, margins compressed from 19% to 12%. A 15% tariff on Japanese-built engines squeezing every unit sold into America, the market that matters most. A spring spent giving away extended warranties instead of cutting prices, because on those margins, price cuts were the one weapon Yamaha couldn't afford to draw. Every one of those pressures was already in place on the morning of July 28th. The ground moving under Yatsushiro added a new one to a stack that was already tall. Then came a strange piece of timing. On August 4th, 1 week after the quake, Yamaha Motor published its half-year results, and the headline number was a record. Record first-half earnings across the whole company, with marine revenue climbing to roughly 300 billion yen. In the same breath, the company acknowledged softer demand for outboards in North America, continued tariff pressure, and announced a restructuring in the United States, ending in-house side-by-side vehicle production at its Georgia plant, with roughly 300 positions affected. A record half and a retreat, announced together. Both are true, and the way they're both true is the key to this whole act. Yamaha Motor is an empire. Motorcycles, marine, industrial machinery, and more. And the empire is fine. The marine division has long been one of that empire's most profitable corners, and it's precisely where the pressure sits. The demand softness is in outboards, the tariff bites engines, and now the stopped factory builds them. Across the Pacific, the contrast requires only description. Mercury builds its outboards in Wisconsin. No tariff for American buyers, no earthquake. Factories the CEO describes as fully capacitized after years of investment. And 5 new engine platforms funded and in development. None of that is Mercury's doing, and the company has said nothing about any of it. But markets don't wait for statements. The last time supply decided this industry was the pandemic era, when Mercury had engines in stock while competitors didn't. And Mercury's own CEO has told analysts those gains proved structural, not temporary. That's the mechanism boaters should understand, because it's about to be tested again. Boat builders plan months ahead. A builder who can't confirm engine delivery dates has one phone call to make. And every week of uncertainty at Yatsushiro writes Wisconsin's sales pitch for it. Be precise about what this is and isn't. An earthquake is nobody's strategy, and there's no version of this story where Mercury deserves credit or Yamaha deserves blame. What the quake did is simpler and colder. It took a market that was already tilting. Record Mercury share, Yamaha's compressed margins, the tariff wedge, and leaned on the tilted side. If Yatsushiro restarts in weeks, this act becomes a footnote. If it runs toward the Honda benchmark, the fall ordering conversations happens while one of Yamaha's 2 doors is still closed. And the structural gap Mercury's CEO described gets a temporary accelerant that nobody priced in. Which brings this to the person the whole story actually lands on. Not the companies, not the analysts. The boater standing in a dealership this fall being told a delivery date by someone who doesn't know either. So the question from the start of this video: how long does damage like this take to heal, and what does it mean for anyone waiting on a Yamaha? Here's everything that can honestly be said, sorted into what's known and what isn't. Known. On July 28th, an earthquake killed 38 people in Kumamoto and stopped one of the 2 factories on Earth that build Yamaha outboards. Liquefaction was reported at that plant, in ground that moved by nearly a meter in one of the hardest hit cities of the event. The regional benchmark for recovery from this kind of earthquake is about 5 months, and the company absorbing this was already carrying compressed margins, a tariff, and its softest American demand in years. Unknown. Everything that decides the outcome. The extent of the damage, the restart date. None announced at the time of recording. Whether the suppliers behind the plant come back on the same schedule as the plant itself. Honesty also requires the other side of the ledger. Most industrial stoppages from this quake look precautionary. An economist at a major Japanese research institute called the overall impact relatively temporary. And Yamaha has weathered far worse across 7 decades. The company itself is not fragile. What's fragile is this particular year of its marine business. Which leaves the practical part for the boater this actually touches. If you have a Yamaha on order, or if you're planning a purchase this fall, nothing in this video says cancel. It says ask. Ask your dealer for the delivery date in writing. Ask again if the date moves. And treat a moving date as information rather than an annoyance. Because delivery dates are how a supply problem announces itself to the public weeks before any press release does. If you're repowering and comparing brands, availability now belongs on your comparison sheet next to price and warranty. This event is why. And if your Yamaha is already on your transom, nothing here concerns you at all. The engine's already on the water, don't stop running because a factory pauses. The bigger picture deserves 1 minute because this story is a lesson that outlasts it. Boaters compare engines by horsepower, weight, and warranty. And almost nobody asks the question this earthquake just asked for them. Where does it come from? And how many places can make it? Every engine on the market is the visible end of a chain. Factories, suppliers, ground. And the chain stays invisible right up to the day it breaks. Mercury's dominance was built in the last moment the chain broke, when having engines beat having better ones. Whatever happens in Yatsushiro, that rule didn't change. In this industry, the winner of the next crisis is decided before it starts, by whoever built the most resilient way of making things. The clock on this story has no date printed on it, which makes it worse than a deadline. A deadline can be planned around. Somewhere in Kumamoto, engineers are standing on ground that moved, deciding what it will take to trust it again. When Yamaha announces the restart, the fall order books will already be written, one way or the other. We'll cover the answer when it comes. And until then, the most important part of your outboard is the part nobody ever looks at: the ground it was built on.